Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Women at Work series in partnership with SALT. We have a great panel today to discuss securing my job and finances during COVID. April officially marks the 13th month for our lives being upheaved by the COVID-19 pandemic. After what now we know was only a temporary break, the numbers are going up drastically. Like we have already seen in other parts of the world, the second wave makes the first look mild, and in India, it isn't much different. And we have only just entered the second wave. After health and well-being, the biggest concerns for most are towards the topic of finances and job security. Unlike last time, we have learnings this time that we can apply early on and can be geared better. We have some amazing ladies today talking to us about jobs and finances during COVID. So without any further delay, let me welcome the panelists. I'll start with Shinjini Kumar. With her co-founders, is currently setting up SALT. It's a fintech startup with the mission to enable more women buy more financial services. Prior to this, she was the head of consumer banking at Citibank India. And before that, she has worked in Paytm, PwC, Bank of America Merrill Lynch, and Reserve Bank of India in senior positions. So welcome, Shinjini.
Hi, everyone.
Secondly, we have Sonu Bhasin. She's the founder of FAB, Families and Business, in what she describes as the second innings of her career. She has led various businesses in senior leadership positions during her corporate career. She was a director at ING Bearings, president Axis Bank, group president Yes Bank, and then the CEO of Tata Capital Limited. She also has 2 books, including a bestseller to her credit. Welcome, Sonu. We're very excited to hear your thoughts today.
Thank you for having me. And I'm excited as you are about this conversation, which is a very important one. So thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, Sonu. Finally, I would like to introduce my co-host today. Shruti is an HR consultant for startup and a handwriting analyst. She dedicates a lot of her time in volunteering work as a regional leader for Lean In Gurgaon, Pride in India, Enable Disability, Mentor for Change, Niti Aayog, Stop Acid Attack, and Nirbhaya Jyoti Trust. Welcome, Shruti.
And yes, and I'll introduce Sneha today for all of us. Thanks, Sneha, for the introduction. So Sneha is basically a product manager with Microsoft, and she's based out of Munich right now. And in midst of loads and loads of chaos of shifting houses, she's been able to take time out and host all of us. And thanks, Sneha, for all of that. She's worked with various companies focusing on finance and strategy, consulting, including Deloitte, Frankfurt, and here she is, hosting all of us today for this amazing session. And before I start, yes, 3 finance people will guide us today to know how do we look at ourselves and, our own stress that we are currently facing because of the uncertainties wave 2. Like I would love to say it that way because yes, around December, we all relaxed ourselves and now we're, smashed with another worries, which is more uncertain because we thought we've had a learning, but there seems to be a new learning here. So amid all of this, Sneha, let's start the conversation.
Thank you, Shruti, and thank you, Shinjini and Sonu, for joining us today. I would like to start with the topic of financial security because, like I mentioned, it is one topic everybody goes back to during uncertain times. And we do now see a new wave of COVID in India come back with a vengeance. What are the implications that you guys foresee this time around for businesses? Shinjini, maybe do you want to start?
Yeah, okay, I'll start because I think Sonu will have a lot more to say because your question relates to businesses more than, but let me get started because when COVID started last year, I was still at Citi and I had no plans at the time of leaving. And we had to put our entire team to work from home, which was apart from the branch team. So it was about give and take 3,000 people. And a lot of, and we did have enough diversity, and so there were many women and as well as men. I think we started to see a few trends, and we were as organized about it as we could possibly be in terms of making sure that things were that there was a lot of hand holding, let me put it this way, because we could afford to do a lot of hand holding. There was an entire technology teams, operations team that were helping people with their tech asks. We were also trying to get into things like, do you have good internet at home? Do you need a dongle? So just like taking care of every little thing. So to that extent, we tried to make it as stress-free as we could. And to start with, I think people started in good faith, and there was a bit of a struggle, and we were not tracking productivity as harshly as we normally would, and therefore I think it started okay. It started to shape up very beautifully after some time, because I think people made sure that they found the space to work, they found the way to be productive, and I think it became more of a two-way relationship between the employer and employee than it had ever been, because in normal circumstances, you walk into the office and then every single problem is for your employer to solve, and you focus on the work that you do that comes to your desk, to your laptop, to your conference room, and then you leave in the evening and you more or less leave the problems behind, barring some leaders who carry some of that home. And now all of those things were at your home, at your doorstep for you to solve. So people had willy-nilly become collaborators in that vast task of keeping the enterprise afloat. And as time progressed, one of the interesting things for me was to see how much that collaboration was working, and depending upon the leaders, because a lot of the leaders were able to do this really well, and some people struggled and learned. But frankly, what happened was that a lot of the people were solving problems from home, whether it was a simple problem like a network or a quiet place to find, or all the meeting and logistics coordination, et cetera, and we found that to be very encouraging. Obviously, over a period of time, we also started to see that it started to cause a lot more stress on the women compared to, I'm sure it caused stress to many men of all the different types, so I don't want to underplay that at all. But it also did, and this was not just City, because by that time I was already planning to leave and do something else. And I had many other friends that I was talking to. And I started to see that, because it was overwhelming. Like in my own case, my mother was undergoing cancer treatment. I had, no help, and I had kids at home, and I had to do work, and I had to also, and of course, I have very collaborative people. My kids are grown up, but I started to think more and more about women who had small children, families that had small children, families that had elderly to care for, families that did not have that much space to make a separate space for everything. And I think it brought a lot of empathy and understanding to the workplace in a very crash course sort of a way, which would have never, because you play all these games, and when you go on offsites and you try to do these things, and this was like a real life example of all of that happening in real life. So people were learning a lot, but I just feel like it was also getting to a point where people were giving up in some sense and saying, this is really hard. This is so hard that I have to do all of this, and I never can figure out the overlap between. So then we started to do sessions like saying, what will help you? So we would say things like, no calls after a certain time, or whatever. So there were various, and people found different ways to cope with it. Like I had my finance head he had two twin children, and he used to say, at 8 o'clock, my boys come and take the laptop from me and my dad, because that is their time for 1 hour to play on the laptop. So both of us can't actually work. So that brings us back from our workplace in a way. And I thought that was nice. So many people found their own strategies to cope with that. But that was one of the serious issues, this, overflowing of work and home. And that begins to affect your, I should say, peace of mind, mental health, just your ability to be productive, et cetera, et cetera. But so I'm not giving you a very direct answer to the question that you asked. I'll leave that for Sonu. But I just wanted to set the context in terms of saying, what has it meant that this thing has gone on for a year and it doesn't look like there is an end in sight, and how people will keep calibrating that as they go along. And there's a lot of creativity in it. There's also a lot of misery in it, but there's also a lot of positive things that come out of it as well.
Thank you for recapping that, Shinjini. It feels like, I don't know, decades ago that this started, and it's not ending. But I would love to hear your thoughts too, Sonu, on this.
Right. So Sneha, this with specific reference to the second wave of COVID, there's something that we always talk about, that when you're in you just keep saying, oh, there's light at the end of the tunnel. And then there were some wisecracks who said, oh, mind you, just hope that that light at the end of the tunnel is not an incoming train. And the second wave of COVID just feels like that incoming train, because just when we thought that we saw the light at the end of the tunnel, because the numbers in India had started going down and people had kind of lost their fear of COVID, it's just come back, and it's come back with a vengeance. It is, people are more frightened of it now than they were maybe in September, October, when we had the first wave. But that is about the people. But since you also asked about the organizations and the impact of COVID, especially the second wave on the organizations, see, organizations are as resilient as the people within. And while this is one of the most turbulent times that I have seen in my career, in my career in the corporate world over 28, 29 years, I had seen enough crises where at each crisis we thought, ki, chalo, this is the end. And, it's going to be so difficult to recover from this crisis, whether it was the Harshad Mehta scam, or then the UTI scam, or then, the .com bubble, and then later 2007, 2008. And there have been other crises in between. But what I have realized, that the crises are actually also a good time for people to take notice of their own strengths. And that also applies to the organizations. What happens in comfortable times is that we all, including organizations, get complacent, and there's a lot of fat that gets built in. Crises are good times to get rid of that fat, to reconnect with the survival instinct in you, because that is how the human race survives. We all have that survival instinct, and our comfortable lives sometimes make us lose that connect with that survival instinct. So the crises are actually a good time to reconnect with that survival instinct. And without taking names, a number of people who are public personalities that I have seen on television who have shed fat, literally, it's not funny. So people have used the pandemic to become stronger, to reconnect with their own selves, to reconnect with the families. And businesses have also realized which businesses are strong and therefore, they need to survive, and which businesses are not strong or weak, or were indulgences, of the chairman, of the MD, CEO, or whatever. And those are the ones that will have to be let gone of. So, the Darwinian theory is actually being manifested every day, both in the lives of the individuals as well as the lives of the corporations, that it is going to be the survival of the fittest. And it's not only the fittest in terms of the physical aspect of it. Today, the problem is really more of a mental, it's a mental battle that we all have to win over COVID. So that's my short answer. Happy to elaborate on any point if you want to.
Well, Sneha, thank you so much. Sonu, so much for the insights. And as you said, the support that we had to, give to our employees, and support that we had to bring it for ourselves because of the uncertainty that was brought in. So I have two narratives to add to it. I am from HR, and I have worked in startup space largely, and then, how it happened for us was that our company was already struggling to find investors. So we knew we were very thin on our survival mode. We were actually struggling. And then the pandemic happened. So from an HR perspective, it's something that we managed. And what I took that as an opportunity to help my workforce grow was crisis management have to be looked differently. There was anxiety, there was burnout, there was depression, there were relationship issues, that we had to manage. We couldn't pay 2 months' salary, so someone just walked up to see that I won't be able to get married if I'm not going to get paid. Could you imagine my situation? And then it was something very, very, great for us to kind of realize that how do we make a balance, or how do we give answers to these employees? That's one thing to look at. The second thing which actually helped me while having these interactions was that I started asking questions to my employees that who is the financial decision maker in your life? That became a very empowering, question for millennials who were looking towards growth. So if you look at the whole crisis, it has got different meaning at 3 levels. For youth who just started their work career, people who are already in the middle of their growth phase and they would want to invest into their life further, and then people who are planning for their retirals. In my organization, the retiral segment was not there, but balancing these two set of employees, asking, constantly pushing them, training them as in how they need to look like, how they need to think of saving, because most of them were salary to salary, but monthly enjoyment and package and travel, everything planned, and now financial independence made a different sense to them. So that was one journey that pandemic threw me, and maybe I just tried to make some meaning out of it. Second is my own personal journey, I'll tell you. I have secured my future. I've done my investments, and I was just getting into the space of financial literacy, and I was wanting to invest and help my money grow. So when I said I'm done with my future, I knew that I have my FDs done, I have my life insurance, I have my health insurance, and I thought that my ecosystem will help me survive. Now here is the situation. I am not getting paid because my organization was struggling. So my savings was something that I was living on with, and then I'm hit with the COVID. I had a job loss. Now what am I supposed to do? Now if I look at my future, it is still secure because my parents very clearly told me, in this situation, don't touch your savings. Look for something that can help you survive. A valid question, a valid input from my parents, but to me, it was more like I just started learning how to make investment in mutual funds, how to make investments in, short-term investments, and look for more meaning. How can I help my money grow? And then this is stuck. So taking the conversation forward is where I would looking at, asking question here now is that how do we look at our savings and asset? Because this was a very, very trivial situation. Now with wave 2, I don't know how will I survive. And I'm sure, a lot of people listening to us will have similar questions. Sneha?
Yeah. Shinjini, do you want to take that question?
That it's a beautiful example, and thank you for sharing a personal story, Shruti, because it's always it's hard, but it always helps, right? It helps you, and it also helps others. So I think it's an important thing for us to do. And what I'm taking away from your story is, of course, nobody knew COVID was going to happen. So we were all living our lives in the way that we were living. And by the time you are hit with this and you realize this, you then feel, oh, it's already so late for me to do. What can I do now? And so that is the worst part of this feeling, because you are now sort of almost going back and beating your younger self up, saying, why the hell did I not do this before, right? And that's one of the very common things that happens. And it doesn't help that whenever you look at, and now if you go and you try to open any app or any video or anything where you want to learn about more further investing, etc., everybody gives you so much gyan about the value of compounding and the fact that you should start early and all of that it just keeps on adding layers and layers of guilt to an already guilt-ridden mind. So one of the things that when we were doing our sort of initial build-up for SALT, we were talking to a lot of women, younger women typically, but basically trying to understand what is it that inhibits people from doing it at that young age when they start. And this happens, and clearly there's a gender divide in this particular issue. So we can safely say that we find that when guys start a job, they typically do, many of them, and always there will be exceptions. So I'm not saying that it's always 100%, but many of them then, they have to file their first tax return, and they go and somehow struggle and figure it out and fill it up something. And that's the time that they first realize that if they buy an insurance or a ELSS or something, they can make a little. And when you're just starting a job, then a 5,000 rupee saving is a good saving. Like it makes you feel good that you say, instead of, nobody likes to pay taxes. So instead of paying that tax, you save your 5,000. So you struggle and you save your 5,000, you feel good about it. But what it does is, it's not material in the long term, because very quickly you exhaust your ATC 150,000 limit, and after that it ceases to be material. But the trigger becomes important, because you sort of force yourself to learn. And what happens is, with a lot of girls, is that somewhere there is that implicit underwritten thing that your dad will help you to do this, or your dad will tell some chartered accountant to do it. There is a lot of protection around us, right? So we don't struggle, we delegate that struggle to somebody. Now what that does is that and maybe the ELSS gets done, maybe the insurance gets bought, but it doesn't start us off on a journey. And at SALT, our primary insight is to say, and we're not using the tax example as the actual trigger, because people will be at different stages. Like if somebody came to me, even 20 years ago, and said the ELSS, you wouldn't care, right? Because your PF would have 150,000 or whatever. So, but we are trying to use this as a primary insight to say, you get started early on your journey, and your impulse doesn't have to be either a crisis for future or but really the fact that you it's as important for you to know this as it is for you to be to be fit, or to have good relationships, or any other aspect of your life. So why would you not make time for it when you make time for everything else? So it's just and how do you make that interesting? So Shruti, in your situation, for example, right, there are two ways to look at this story. Obviously, at this stage, there is no financial product available for you to double your money, right? Because you can know a lot about the value of compounding, and you can start putting aside small sums of money to say, okay, at some point of time, this will help me. But there's nothing that will compound your money tomorrow, right? There's no mutual fund that will give you a great return, because the market is already here. So even if you invest, it's who knows where it is going to go. So there are no quick fixes to that solution. But two good things come out of this. One is that you begin to understand that there is this opportunity that I should use and understand, and therefore hopefully you will learn more about how to do this and depend on yourself rather than on somebody else. The second good thing that comes out of this is, which I think gets underestimated and not talked about as much, is that every investment is not about financial investment. Every investment, time is the other very important resource that we all have as humans, right? And sometimes you could even say that it is more important than money. And relationships are the other important resource that we have as humans. But we put them into different buckets when it comes to our attitude to use them. But typically, I find women actually are very resourceful about using the other two resources of time and relationships to get themselves ready for a future situation. So just to take your example, there is nothing that will help you to compound your money in 3 months, or to keep you financially stable for 3 months. But you gave the example of your parents in your case. But let's even say, if you were to today take 2 months off, take that relationship advantage that you have with your parents, do a course or a program that helps you to then plug into either a job, or even an entrepreneurial venture, or whatever you want to do, you could bridge that gap faster. So what I'm trying to say is that by saving 1,000 rupees every month and using all the value of compounding, you could get to a 10x point. But by investing in yourself, by learning something new, by using that time to your advantage, you could probably make 20x. And we don't think of both of them in the same way when we think about decisions, and get frustrated and upset about the fact that there is no money in the bank. You have money, but you also have other resources. And women have always been very good at using other resources, but somehow we've dumbed it down because making the whole discourse about saying, market and debt and equity, which are all very important things, and we have to know that, and we have to use that with this thing. So a lot of the women that we talk to intuitively get it right. So many of them will say, I'm a baker and I want to invest into a baking program. I spoke to a woman yesterday. She's a traveler, and she left a job actually at Citi to become a travel blogger. And she said the hardest thing for me was making that switch from thinking of a camera as an expense, because when I was working at Citi, buying a camera was a luxury and it was an expense, and now to thinking of it as an investment. Because if I don't have the best camera possible, I'm not going to be able to write the best blogs as possible and get as much views as possible. So how do you start thinking about something as an expense and something as an investment, and therefore helps you make better decisions on an ongoing basis?
That was a great answer, Shinjini. It kind of took me down my memory lane, because I feel like there was a point I started making those decisions, and I could kind of just resonate with everything that you mentioned, and I had similar thoughts. I do want to, though, drive one point that for the future, I always think that now is a great time. Whatever you didn't do in the past is gone, but it's always a good time to start, and there is no better time than now. However, just talking about the immediate crisis. So what can people do who are in that crisis right now? And yes, one aspect is building better long-term habits, but as a short-term crisis solution, or how does one deal with that? Sonu, maybe you can add points to that.
Yeah, so thank you. So Shinjini did, what she said just was such good advice about the need to invest not only money, but also in yourself, in your ability, and in your relationships. But, let me just try and give you a little perspective from a different perspective, and also about the situation that we are in right now. So the first thing that I want to say to people like Shruti, and Shruti, again, thank you for sharing your story. The first thing that every one of us needs to keep in mind, whether it seems possible or not, is that this too shall pass. In history, there has not been any pandemic, any war, any crisis that has shut down the world. This crisis too is not going to shut down the world. Yes, it is a very traumatic time, and it's more traumatic for some and less traumatic for others, but make no mistake, it is traumatic for every one of us. But in troubled times, I think we need to keep our hopes alive, because if there is no hope, there is nothing that we can do now that is going to make a difference in the future. So with this belief in mind that this too shall pass, the immediate short-term steps or the immediate concern is that of survival, because this is not the time to be adventurous. This is not the time to go gambling, so to use a metaphor, but this is a time to survive, putting our heads down and surviving, just surviving, because this road will end in a better place, definitely. And each one of us has a different way of surviving. I know enough people, and not only young people, even people in their 30s and 40s with families, who have gone and, they've shifted houses, they've shifted cities, they've gone and, they're now living with their parents. I mean, there's no shame in it. Parents are parents. And if you're finding a challenge in surviving, please, reach out to your parents, or parents reach out to your kids. This is a time when family has to come together. Two, if you had listened to Shinjini, you were one of those who followed Shinjini's advice 20 years ago or 10 years ago and actually have a little nest egg built, this is the time to start using it sparingly, not for indulgences, but again for survival. And one thing that I found very useful at various stages in my life, because, when in a corporate career, there are ups and there are downs. But one thing helped me always is sitting down with my husband, if there are any men listening or if there are any others. So sitting down with your partner and making a list of your essential expenditures per month. And believe me that when you figure out what are your essential expenses per month, there's going to be a sense of relief, because there are some expenses that we take as essential, but when push comes to a shove, we realize that we can do without them. And once you know what is it that you need to survive, and survive this period through, then figure out if you already are lucky to be in a job, you're lucky to be in a consultancy, a retainership, you have projects that give you money, that's one bit of money coming in. Otherwise, start dipping into the assets that you've built, because when we are investing, we are saying, oh, we are saving money for a rainy day. So, this is one of those rainy days. And guess what? These rainy days are not going to last. So you will be able to start saving for your rainy days very, very soon, once all this is behind us. So my short message to people who are listening is, this is a time for putting your heads down and surviving. Make use of your own assets if you have. Make use of the relationships. Be there for each other, because it's only together, when we are together, that we can survive this. So I don't know whether that answers your question, but I thought that I'd give it a different perspective.
That
Thank you
absolutely
so much,
answers.
absolutely. But my question to you now is, Sneha. Sneha, you're youngest in the panel, and you've just, you've shifted your job, you've shifted your geography, and then you're also facing the pandemic. Being the youngest in the panel, and obviously you're looking at world a little differently at this moment. How is your experience? The question is. Second is, how are you managing your entire finances at the moment?
When Sonu was actually saying what to do, it just took me back a year ago. And a little bit background about me was I did my MBA a few years ago, and my husband was doing his MBA last year. So you can imagine we had expenses. We had expenses for the fees, and we moved countries. So we were in a new country. And I remember that when we realized that, oh my God, the pandemic is there. And we sat down together and we were like, okay, rent, electricity, any student loan, any basic expenses that we need. And what we were thinking of investment plans, we said, okay, that gets pushed by 6 months. And we put it together, and we said that, okay, we have to at least have enough liquidity that we don't have to turn back around and call our parents and say, please send us money, because we don't have money. So it really did take me down that memory lane, and we had to do that. We had to rethink of, okay, were there investment plans, and we had to put things on hold. We had to be realistic. We had to think about the fact that what if we get laid off? What if I get laid off? And what happens then? So somehow we did put this together. We said, yes, plan A, plan B, plan C.
Okay, open question to all three of you in the panel, because we're talking about discussing your finances with a partner, but there are a lot of people who would be single at the moment, or single income family. So the anxiety level at that point is of the job loss, the layoff is significantly higher. So what is the kind of advice either one of you can pick up and suggest? What is that they need to think right now?
Sorry, you didn't get your question. What is the?
So, largely what, as part of the discussion, what I understood was that we're talking about two people earning in a family. But what advice would you give to a person who's got financial responsibilities and is the only earning member in the family?
So let me just jump in here and say that so if you are the earning member, or if you are, and I don't know, thing is that if this is a single income family, everybody else in the family needs to understand that that poor person, whether it's the man or the woman of the house, is under severe pressure because he or she realizes that if he or she loses their job, the entire family suffers. So you need to cut that person some slack because that person is going to be under severe mental pressure, right? But again, this is where your partner comes in or your family comes in. Even if you're a single person, you do have your family or your support system. It's best to have a person that you can talk to, discuss your financial situation, your fears with the person, that if it's your spouse, if it's your parents, if it's your best friend, if it's whoever it is, it's best to talk about your fears, your concerns, and then figure out if somebody needs to do something which is a temporary thing, if somebody needs to take on some what is it called, gig economy, where you do projects. The good thing is that because of the pandemic, working from anywhere has just become so easy. So the world can actually employ you. Earlier, it was only in your city, in your neighborhood, in your whatever, that you could find work. Today, sitting in Delhi, if there is somebody in Australia who needs a service that I can provide through, I can do that. And therefore, if you're looking to earn some bit of extra money, start looking around and figuring out what is that service that you can offer. And when I was a kid, and I remember for my parents' 25th wedding anniversary, we said, we want to contribute, my sister and I was a student, I had no money, and we were service background. So in those days, giving tuitions was one way of earning extra money. And I remember I was in third year college, and I took tuitions for maths because I did maths in college, so maths and science. And I tutored a kid for, I think, 3 months, earned I think 2,000 rupees in the year 85, which was a huge sum of money. And the problem was that after I joined my MBA, that kid wanted to still come and be taught by me. And I was so sick of it. And I said, no, I don't have the time for it. But, today, especially with children sitting at home, helping them with their studies, you can do from your living room, from your from whichever place you are in. It's easier to give these services today. People need banks, financial services institutes, everybody needs good content. Everybody is bringing out magazines and journals and video content, and if they need somebody to manage the written part of it. So if you're good in writing, there you have a job. People need counseling, people need yoga, there's just millions of things that you can do. So just break the constraints, start thinking what you can do, and really, if that survival instinct kicks in, you will find something to do. And every little bit of income helps. Because it is important to remember, and I may sound like a broken record here, that this too shall pass. Better days will come. You will be able to, save. You will be able to indulge in those luxuries soon. But this is a time for putting your head down and surviving.
And I want to add, that is fantastic advice and very well spoken, Sonu. And I want to just add one thing to this. One of the damages we do to our children in India as parents is to get them into this hobby horse of saying, "Ek baar achhi naukri mil jaye." Ek baar achhi shaadi ho jaye. So what happens is that you, somewhere in your mind, you are only worth something if you have a job that is a good job forever, or a relationship that is a good relationship forever. Now, life doesn't work like that. Jobs don't last forever and relationships don't last forever. So then, because we've never been brought up for that, we've never been brought up with that expectation, we have no tools, there are no role models in our families, etc., who are like that. If you go to economies which are bigger economies than ours, people are used to, at least everyone knows somebody who has lost a job and has come out of it. So what Sonu is saying about saying this too shall pass and something new will happen is something which you aren't just hearing from a Sonu Bhasin on a call, but it is something that you've seen some uncle, some cousin, somebody or friends go through. And therefore that belief is an iterative belief and it is settled in your psyche. In India, what is settled in our psyche is the daddies and the uncles, and every role model that our families ever put up to was, doctor uncle who became like millionaire, banker uncle who, bought the big house. Like everybody is like that. Free startup uncle who got valued at billions, etc. So what happens is that ability to then say that these are hard times, I'm going to tide through them with the resources I have, because tomorrow is going to be better and I will do whatever comes my way. So one of the, again, when we were thinking of SALT, one of the things that was also driving us was exactly this idea that women have lived this life for the last many years, something which everybody will now have to live, because this whole certainty and this uncle type jobs are not going to be there anymore anyway. So, and women have lived those lives, right, where you were working and you left your job primarily to have a baby, but then it was just the hardest thing to get back to the workplace. So you had to keep thinking about, how to be innovative. If you had that in you, then you had to keep thinking about how do you come back, what do you do, etc. And many women just figured out, and there are innumerable success stories. I mean, Sonu is a success story of a second career, like a major shift, but there are many stories of people doing various things. So I just think that trend will become a lot better, because eventually people don't just we just don't give up and die. We find the way to go through that, and that releases that energy. I'll give you an example. In our home in Mukteshwar, we've been looking to build a garden, and I have a brown thumb, I can't do anything. So, but when we found finally a guy, we narrowed down and we found one person. He finally refused our job because he said he had 15 other projects to do. So this country has so much work, but the work is not sitting all around you. The work is sitting in different places, in different shapes or form. They're not all permanent jobs. And I think we have never looked at that as the moment you go into a school, your parents pay money, put you into a, English medium school. And that's when you kind of, you just lose all that enterprise that you actually need in times like this. So just go back and look for it within yourself, within your communities, and you'll find a lot of answers. I think we don't do that enough.
Sonu and Shinjini, I think one thing I want to highlight here, because you both spoke about things being borderless, and I think this show itself is a great example of that. When we started off, we were doing these sessions in person, and I don't think this setup would have been possible. It's, Shinjini, you're sitting out of Bombay, Sonu out of Delhi, I am in Germany, Shruti is in Lucknow, and it's borderless. It's exactly what we're talking about. Apart from this, Shinjini, another thing is, you mentioned role models, and it is such an important point, because we do tend to, idealize a great job. Designations are so important. If you're working in a big company, it's like career is set. And I personally have also heard that, and I find it a bit odd. So my question is that there are a lot of people who are scared because of this reason to change jobs, or are worried about job losses. I, for one, have changed my job last month, so I know that it's still possible. And Shinjini, you mentioned earlier on that you also left city and you started something different because that's what you wanted to do. I want to know, how can one walk through that process during COVID? Anyone?
Sonu, why don't you go first? In fact, I had a question to ask of Sonu, because I can probably learn from it. Too late. But when people actually, sometimes these things are forced upon you, like in a COVID situation, that it came, you lost a job, and now you need to look for something else. Sometimes it's something that you plan for. Like in my case, it was 1 year of thinking that I want to get into this particular problem solving and setting up a startup, and therefore I had that much time to plan. Sometimes you always know that you're in the job that you will not be, and therefore you have to ready yourself for something else. And then, so that time period available to you to plan and to make that jump can be very, very different. And obviously that has a bearing on how you plan your finances and how you actually use it. So I'm going to leave the answer to you first, Sonu, because I think you would have more experience with it, working with so many business families that you work with.
Sure. So, I decided that I needed time off from my corporate career in 2015. And the first question that people asked me when I told them that I was quitting and I was, moving back to Delhi, I was a banker and I was in Bombay. The first question was, why? Why are you doing it? I mean, you're actually at the height of your career, and, why do you want to quit right now? So, let me just share with all of you that looking back, I think I was fortunate that I was given time, and I'll tell you how to come about that decision. So I had started my career with the Tatas as part of Tata Administrative Service, TAS as it's called now. And after spending time with ING and Axis and Yes Bank, I went back to the Tatas because at that time the Tatas wanted to be a bank, and and I was part of a small team that they had got together. We applied for a banking license, but then I think within 5 months, Bombay House changed its mind. This is all public knowledge. Now, the role for which the role that I saw myself fulfilling for the rest of my professional career suddenly was nowhere, and not because of anything I had done. It was just that the group took a call that they did not want to be a bank, and therefore I said, now what am I going to do? Now, honestly, these kind of existential questions, one thought about them every weekend. But the moment I came back to office on a Monday, got caught in the hurly-burly of office, and therefore those existential questions were pushed aside. But now, after, there was going to be no Tata Bank, and while I had to decide what I wanted to do with myself, that gave me time to think, what should I do? And so I decided what the youngsters do these days. I decided to take a gap year. So I said, let me just take 1 year off. If at the end of the year or during the year, I decide that I do need to get back into a full-time job, I had enough confidence in myself that within 6 months, I would find a job that I would want to do. So I took a year off, and, we are from Delhi. We packed up our bags from Bombay. We came back to Delhi. It didn't take me long. It took me just 3 months to realize that I did not want to go back into a full-time job, right? And that's when the scary part happened. Because if I didn't have a brand behind me, if I didn't have a designation behind me, what was going to be my identity? Because for 28, 29 years till then, the first thing that when I met a person who did not know me or I did not know, the first thing was, here's my business card. And, it was as if that business card defined who I was. And I'm being absolutely honest in saying that I did have sleepless nights to say, how will I introduce myself to people? To say I'm not doing anything? So it is scary to when you transition from a job to a no job, whether it is planned or unplanned. But to everyone who's either thinking about it or is in a situation like that, the only bit of advice I can give you is designations don't matter. For 2 years after that, I consciously did not have a business card because I did not want my identity to be tied to a small piece of cardboard. I did not want that. That time also gave me a Okay, so just a little digression there. In another avatar or maybe in another life, I did listen to Shinjini, so I did, do my investments, and therefore I was fortunate that I could decide that I did not want to go back to a full-time job, and also had the freedom to decide what I wanted to do, and therefore, which is the area that I'm working in, family businesses. And I've done some good work, even though I say it myself, in the last 5 years. So the advice, or from my experience, what I can share with others who may be in a similar situation is that I mean, accept the fear that you have. It's natural. Don't fight it. Because when you fight it, you add to your anxiety. It is okay to feel fearful. It is okay to think about, what am I going to tell people? Also be prepared that people's behavior is going to change. I mean, when I was a president at Axis Bank and group president and, whatever designations, fancy designations I had, there were people who wanted to meet me, and my calls were like returned, my emails were answered. But when I did not have a designation, I did not have a job, the same people refused to take my phone calls. My emails would go a begging. They would not respond to my messages. It made me realize who, वो कहते हैं ना हिंदी में, कोई किसी का सगा नहीं है. So for those of you who are in a good jobs, who have good brands behind you, who have good designations, and when people treat you well, please, 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 be conscious of the fact that it's not about you, it's about the chair that you occupy, and that when that chair is not there, you will find your own identity. It is going to be an exciting journey. It is okay to be fearful, but again, once your survival instinct kicks in, you will get ahead. But those times are exciting times, fun times, good to see behavior of people, whatever, different things. So I don't know whether I digressed from your question or answered it. I got carried away, sorry.
No, that was a beautiful story, honestly. What I would, or if I go on your LinkedIn profile, you're right, I would only see designations, but there is so much behind it, and it's truly good to hear it, and it's very inspiring. So thank you for sharing that.
Quickly, I will also add a bit over here, because I am surviving the COVID. I had job loss, no income, no savings to meet my current expenses. And what I did primarily, and HR is the last business function where people would want to invest. My own personal way of looking at my life after going single again, I didn't want to take risk enough in my job profile, because I knew that there is some other work that I'm doing is pushing me to go beyond the normal parameters of how people would have defined life and so on and so forth, which was my volunteering services and doing handwriting analysis in my career. So what I actually did when I have faced this, I knew that people will not have enough market to pay for my handwriting analysis skills, or if I touch base, because for past 1.5 years, I did not touch that skill. I refused client after client because I was busy solving the entire case, which was again a priority for me. So I broke down my entire experience. I was head of HR for a company, so I did not got stuck with the title. Started giving smaller services for survival of startups. Negotiate heavily on them, keep the payment terms and conditions, the timeline has to be reduced to 90 days, 60 days. Negotiated really hard on those things and continued doing so. For some company, I was doing only hiring. To some, I was helping them relook into their policies. For some, I was doing talent acquisition strategy. So I started breaking my own experience and was not limiting myself to one thing. So first 3 months definitely was really hard, because HR, again, business function didn't want to invest. After 3 months, I started getting clients. There were a lot of references that came forward. The second thing, that my community where I, the HR fraternity where I belong, was very, very supportive. We started sharing our projects. Whoever got a reference knew that we can divide the task and we can pay each other. We kept it that integral, and that also helped me survive. Today we're doing, parallel projects with each other, and we came stronger as a community, and that really helped. I could totally relate to when Sonu says, ki, you don't have a business card per se. Why will people listen to you? And this is how can be managed. So one need not immediately, if you're getting into that kind of situation, look towards A, how many months can you survive without having an additional source of income? B, look at how can you leverage, what is the narrative that you can create out of your experience, and start talking to people. You have to talk extensively, network, get people thinking about there are services that can happen. In startup, what I did was everybody knew that they can't afford an HR now. Like a lot of companies that I knew that. So I said, don't take the entire service. No, break it down. I will enable your team. I will not come as head of HR, but I'll enable your team. So the consulting fees goes down. They are able to survive and I'm able to survive. So you have to get innovative as well.
So
that's my pitch.
Shruti, let me just jump in here. I see the COVID time as a huge opportunity for a person who's an handwriting expert, because today corporates or companies cannot meet their the people that they're interviewing in person. But if you as a handwriting expert can give them insights into the candidates, why will they not want to pay you?
They have started coming now.
Yeah.
Initially, first 6-7 months, there was an absolute, they didn't have the budget to do. But now, yes, I am getting queries. And in fact, in the peak of the whole hours, I actually saved 3 lives because they were about to commit suicides.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, employees.
Yeah.
And that helped.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think there's so much to learn from this panel here, but and we got very engaged, so I kind of lost track a little bit of time, but I do want to give the audience a chance. There've been a lot of questions pouring in, so I'm going to jump to the first person. That's Rajni Gurucharan. Can we unmute them and they can ask their questions directly?
Sneha, just to add, I think 7-8 of the questions have been answered through the interaction that we've had, talking about the gig economy, coming out of the mindset issues. We've already answered. So just see which questions we need to take now.
Yeah, that's so if Rajni can be unmuted.
Mahima has, Rajni is unmuted. Rajni, please go ahead.
Yeah. So my question is, I'm middle-aged at the moment. So what steps can I do, or what are the best financial advices you would give me if I were to invest in a couple of places and start saving? Though I have saved very little, but this is unexpected. So what should I do to make my future secure at the moment?
Thank you for the question, Rajni. I'm sure a lot of people are thinking the same. Shinjini, I think this is right up your alley.
So, I just don't want to give you blanket advice in terms of saying, yeah, you should put your money into equity mutual fund, or you should put your money into gold, ETF, or whatever. I don't want to say that, because what you say, where you save is very much a function of what your life situation is and what your expectation from that money is. So one is, of course, a contingency, like a COVID striking where we started this discussion. But when you plan for things, you will plan for it in 3 ways. So you will plan for something which will be a contingency, which is, so I think you should start with where we were starting, which is to make a list of what are your essential expenses and what is the minimum budget on which you can live for 6 months or a period like that, right? So make that amount of money and invest at least that much of money into something which is which you can take out at any point of time without any penalty on it. So such products usually can be a bank FD, and there is a penalty on FD if you make it for a long period and break it in a shorter period. But if you make it for a shorter period and roll over, then you lose lesser than that. So understand about that. But of course, the interest also is taxable. So returns are also low, but they're certain. But whatever you think that is a money that you can need for any contingency is the amount of money. And it can be 3 months for you or 6 months for you, depending upon what your family situation is. at least that much of money you should invest in something where taking that money out is not going to penalize you. It can be a, you know, a debt fund, a short-term debt fund, or a FD or something, but make sure that that is liquid. Any money that you have over and above that, you should not think too much about. I think where we get paralyzed is when we start to look at too many products, too many returns, too much spreadsheet, and you will realize there are very, very minor variation between different products, right? So 0.1% difference, 0.2% difference. The reason those differences exist is because the supplier, the fund manager, is actually making these funds for people that might put, you know, hundreds of thousands of rupees every day, and therefore those differences are meaningful to them. For you, those differences are not meaningful. So just find a good brand and a good you know, fund which has given, and any site like a Money Control will tell you a very basic, very simple way. What is the performance of this fund? You don't even need to worry too much. Just see how many green boxes are there, how many red boxes are there. Doesn't have to be a super rock star risky fund, but invest in equity to some extent. When the market is high, which it is currently, don't invest all your money on the same time. Stagger it out, whether through a SIP or whether through your own purchases over a period of time, but enter the equity market, because over a long period of time the upside in the equity market is worth, you should not lose out on that. And also, if you're comfortable, because most people are comfortable with gold, put a little bit of money into a digital gold type of a product or a gold ETF type of product, because it just gives you a little diversification. I personally, at your stage, I don't know if you already have insurance, so it may not make sense for you to do that. But for somebody who's younger, there's also some benefit of putting your money into some sort of a insurance product that could give you protection, but also, I mean, you do look at something that you can get back without actually losing money. Don't look at a plan where you effectively lose the value of money. Some return should be there, but look at some plan. But so basically, buy 2 or 3 things. Don't go into like understanding and researching the entire universe, but make sure that you have the liquid money available to you, and make sure that some exposure to equity you have. Gold you might already have. Don't buy jewelry. Instead of that, buy some form of gold which is easily tradable as a financial instrument, because you have enough jewelry. I mean, everybody has enough jewelry, because everybody who has jewelry also has a locker. So I have come to the belief that that's something that one should not be worried about. And you should just put, I mean, wear art carrot and buy digital gold is the motto that I have, at least. But some exposure to that is also good. And yeah, essentially that. Don't buy real estate, because the worst thing about real estate as an investment is that just when you will need the money is when the market will be bad, and you will not be able to get your money. So of course, buy a house when you need it, but don't think of real estate as an investment. A lot of people of my generation did make that mistake, because real estate market just kept heating up, and people kept investing into 1, 2, 3, 4 apartments, thinking that will be an investment for me when I get old. People will rent it and I'll make the rent and that will be a return, or I'll sell the house when I have a hard time. Both those situations are very hard, because rents will also keep going down, and depending upon the markets. Like, one of the major thing in COVID is that so many people are working from so many different places. Like Shruti is working from Lucknow. Many of people like her have gone to the tier 2 cities and they're working from there. So who is going to be renting these apartments in Mumbai, Delhi? So rents have come down dramatically. So don't rely on any real estate related sort of investment to give you either the growth or the protection. Is good for you to live in. So that's the broad advice that I think we would like to just give everyone. Yeah.
That's very comprehensive, Shinjini. Also, when you said that your generation kept buying real estate because the prices kept going up, I think our generation cannot afford real estate anymore. So unless our parents are passing it on to us, I don't think we have that option of buying it anymore.
That's true. That is true.
So with that, I will move to the next audience, that is Meera. Can we unmute Meera?
Meera is not able to unmute herself, so can you ask a question on her behalf?
Of course. The question is, which 3 investments have helped you most, And which are your most important personal habits or practices that you think has made you strong and successful? I think they're both very good questions. Sonu,
Me?
yeah.
Which three investments have three investments that I have made
that has helped you the most?
Okay, so these are not only financial investments.
Yes.
The first investment is into my relationship with my husband. I think that has helped me. I wouldn't have been able to do anything in my career if I didn't have a supportive husband. So that is an investment that I have made, and which has only grown, compounded, whatever words that you want to use. Two, the other investment that has helped me is the investment I did not make. That is my husband and I, did not invest in a single property. The house that we live in is a house that my husband inherited from his dad. All through my career, I was called all kinds of stupid names to say, why are you not investing in real estate? And for us, it was always, we were clear we did not want to invest in real estate. And now looking back, that is the best investment decision that we made, that we will not invest in real estate. The third is, and instead invested in the equity market. Again, did not worry too much about that 0.5% return or 1% difference in return, did not churn the portfolio. As one of these, I think it was Warren Buffett who said that, making money is very boring. I mean, if you want excitement, go to Las Vegas. So that's something that I have lived by, that, I have a buy and hold strategy. Shares that we bought in the 90s, we still have those shares. They've grown, in terms of their value. Mutual fund investments are all in growth mode because they are more tax efficient. So those are the investments that I have made. The second one was about some personal habits or characteristics.
Yeah, which are your most important personal habits or practices that you think has made you strong and successful?
Okay, so the first one is, it may seem like a trivial answer, but to me, it's not. I don't take life seriously. It's not that I'm a frivolous person. It's not that I don't take my commitments seriously, but I don't take myself or life seriously. And that has helped me tide through a lot of situations, and that makes me the person that I am. Two is that if I to me, a promise is a promise. I mean, that is something that if I give my word to somebody, I cannot break my word. So deadlines are deadlines. If I've committed to somebody, I think that is something that has earned me enough goodwill and has made me the person that I am. And three, I don't work hard very often, but when I have to work hard, I can work very hard and be totally focused and get things done. So those are the three characteristics.
I've made notes too, Sonu. I think there some takeaways are really good. So I think with that, we've obviously shot a little bit over time, but we don't mind because there is so much we have to learn. There are such engaging conversations. Before we end, I would like to go around once and just do a key takeaways, maybe some quick takeaways from each one of you. So Shinjini, let's start with you this time.
No, I was really so amused to hear Sonu's answers, because I think that's exactly where we started. And I think in a way we came full circle, that we always have to think about resources that we have, not just about the money that we have. And those resources are what we are. Those resources are our attitude to life. Those resources are our relationships, our skills, talents, and money. So all of this put together makes you who you are, gives you the strength to start, and then always keep resetting it and keep moving with all of that together. And I think I just want to I just want to say that to everyone, that don't give up because one of your buckets looks a little half, because at different point of time in your life, different buckets will look half full, less full. Sometimes your relationships will not look as good, sometimes your money will not look as good, sometimes your skill sets will look inadequate because you would have gotten priced out of the market. Something that you thought you were very bright and good at suddenly becomes a low value commodity, and something else becomes a high value commodity. So so you always have to calibrate that and look at it and rebalance your portfolio, including all of this in your portfolio. That's a good and healthy attitude to money and life.
Oh, thank you, Shinjini. Sonu, maybe we'll move to you then.
So my takeaway from this session is Shruti, when she says that she's been through this and she's been through this and that and the rest. And when I look at her, she looks happy, she's smiling, she's positive.
And she's saving lives.
She's saving lives. There's no better takeaway for me from this session than, Shruti actually embodies this session, that if you have the will to survive, if you keep, a positive attitude, you do whatever you're good at. I mean, why will this pandemic keep you down? This too shall pass. I am a broken record, but this too shall pass. And when anybody is in any kind of a gloom and doom mood, I think just take a snapshot of Shruti smiling right now. And that should give you the courage and the motivation and the belief that, good times will come.
Thank you so much, Sonu. Why am I laughing? And why I'm laughing right now is because to me, you were the key takeaways stating that don't take life seriously. I had so much of panic earlier because, oh my God, the wave 2 will make me even more unemployable. I am 40 now. What left in my life? But I think,
you're much younger than me. So don't tell me, oh, I'm 40 now.
No. I turned 60 when I was 38 because thinking that I'm going to be 48. So that's the fact that I would have. But yeah, COVID actually made me realize that you have to live every day, every moment and make it more meaningful. I knew when it was getting stuck, we knew that lockdown will happen. And what I was actually fighting for was Nirbhaya's case. We had to get it to closure. 22nd lockdown was announced, 20th the hanging has to happen. Living each moment and thinking about nothing else but that. And then from there, moment it was done, 22nd onwards, I had to think about my own life and so on and so forth, making it happen. And then, all during COVID, we worked together, built up a community that was supportive enough. Even as we talk, I'm getting news that, this need to be done, this need to be done, this hospital needs to be contacted, working relentlessly. But I realized that it is not money which is driving the purpose. So I may not have money for time being to manage my expenses. I may have savings, whatever it is. But to me, the learning is that, yes, keep moving on and don't lose your purpose.
Yeah.
Thank you, Shruti. You are a ball of energy there, by the way. I have to, even when I'm talking to you, I was like, I don't know how you're doing so many things. For me, I think the key takeaway was when Sonu said, she answered the question on 3 investments, and it wasn't money. And money came there, but it was at the end. And Shinjini had added to that point earlier, talking about that when we're talking about investment, it's a lot about learning. So for me, that kind of came a full circle. A lot of times when we're thinking about investments, we think about, whether it's equity, is it FD, is it really saving money in the bank? But there is so much investment that you do in yourself. And it is also about time and the energy that you put in there. So that's definitely my takeaway from this session. Apart from that, I would say a big thank you for this session. I thoroughly enjoyed it. There was so much learning for me, and I am very sure it's the same for the audience. There were so many questions. There were so many, points put out there in the chat. And I will tell the audience also, if you still have questions, please go right on our Facebook page. We will try and answer back as much as possible. We want to have, all the information passed on to you. So thank you once again for this lovely session. And have a good weekend, guys.
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you and bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye, Sonu. Bye, Shruti.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Sneha.